Chapter 8. By the time Jonathan returns to harbour, his arm pulses and burns. From his shoulder to wrist, it feels as if each throb will pull it from the socket. All day he has kept the pain hidden, during the hunt and the time after, when the men discussed the lost fish, and again when they retired to the cuppa grounds nearer inshore and caught their fill for dinner. Despite the loss of the great fish, as they snagged an afternoon's catch flapping from the cold, their bond grew. By day's end, when the boy brought the sea queen bobbing alongside the quay, there was a camaraderie among them. For all of them were true sea men, and somewhere inside there was relief to have touched that great creature, but not to have robbed the world of it. All the while the boy's pain had grown. He had refused a lift from Uncle Mike, staring him down, and he had remained respectfully quiet, acting the dumb boy when Van Deventer had realized the monitor had not been plugged in and wanted answers as to how the boy had guided them to both the blue and a good school of cuppa. "How did you know the fish was there?" "With the monitor, sir." "The thing's not plugged in." "It was on, meneer. Of course it was." But during the long walk on that long dirt road, with his toes crunching upon the day's heat in the sand, he had finally dropped the mask, and then the pain had come. The memory of Uncle Mike towering over him, and the smash of the stick into his flesh, and the tearing of his arm, and the hatred he had felt, and the fear. And so instead of turning towards his hut, as he has done every night of his life, he finds his feet carrying him another way. The bay beckons, the cold of the ocean, and her. As the sun draws the curtain on another day in a blaze of pink and orange, he crests the dune to the beach and stumbles into the cold, gasping as the water takes his arm, and his weight, and the pain, and covers it with ice. He walks until the bottom gives way and the ocean begins to wash against his upturned chin, and then he swims ahead with 3 limbs, dragging the 4th behind. He wants to know where she is. He wants her beauty to burn the pain of this day away. He wonders as he trades water out there, tiring under the weight of his trousers and his tattered shirt, and most of all the cold that sucks at his bones and his lungs, inviting him under. "Where are you?" He remembers when he left her. He sees with a new jolt of pain the hurt in her eyes. This pain eclipses the pain of torn bone and ligament. What else could he do? "Where are you?" He knows that she will not come for him. He has known it always. Beings like her are not for his kind. His broken kind is for toil. He knows that he has betrayed his kind in thinking that his toil could be gone, in hoping that something as beautiful as she might be for him. He smiles, remembering the shape of his old self. The resignation, the knowing that life is this, that days are this toil forever and always. He puts his uninjured hand up to his face, allowing his fingers to explore the ridges of his lip, that sneering scar beneath his sparse beard. In that puckered and malformed skin that he knows so well, those peaks and valleys his fingers know so well, he feels the truth he cannot escape from. He is not for her. He is for no one. She is not coming. He rolls onto his back. He wants to be with the stars when his strength fails him. He wants to remember his one triumph, the blue sailfish, and the look on Fat Mostard's face when the great fish did come onto the line, did sound when he said it would, and did breach and sail above them with line arcing in the sun, as he said it would. He wants to bask in the beauty of that moment rather than the collapsed ridges of his own thoughts, his stupid face. "I beat him today," he whispers to Venus, who has unveiled herself down close to the horizon. "He did not own me today. Sirius appears winking above him, the brightest one of them all, and with it the belt of Orion and Betelgeuse, and the seven sisters, ready to hunt them again. He could not touch me. He giggles as the cold steals into him, numbing his feet, clouding the pain in his arm, and whispering at his heart. Even though he broke my bone, he couldn't touch me. I didn't let him find her, he murmurs to Venus, her beauty intensifying as the sky slips from purple to black. He got nothing. She is still free. Gently he closes his eyes, ready to slip beneath the swell, ready to sleep, holding the image of her smile. He imagines her warmth. He lets it surround him. He knows she will not come. He abandoned her. He could do nothing else. He remembers the fear on her face. He closes his eyes, ready to forget. My love, her voice in the darkness, threading through the cold. My love, wake up. Again, he opens his eyes, looking up to Venus. My love, he giggles. My love. He blinks. My love. Jonathan, wake up. A shaking. The world is shaking. Wake up, wake up. He opens his eyes fully, back to this world. The stars burn, brilliant in a swath across the black sky. Wake up. He moans. I came to find you. You are hurt. Her arms swirl about him, her hands, her fingertips gently touching his injury. You are freezing. Her fin about him, her heat filling him. I didn't want to wait until tomorrow. His eyes snap open, cold returns. He groans at his arm. What did he do to you? Her hands clasp his arm and her warmth invades it, dispelling the pain. What happened? My love. He laughs as he wakes fully and puts his arm around her shoulders. She doesn't answer. Her face is a mask of worry as she enfolds his shoulder with her fingers. Through the cold, he hisses at the pain. You should not have gone with him. He never found you. He mutters this, the dark returning. Shh. His head falls to her collarbone. Shh. As she fills him with all the warmth of her lonely heart. The water is cold when you are gone. She turns his head and places her mouth on his. She breathes into him, and together they slip beneath the swell. Beneath the surface, in her cave past her guardian at the northern channel's head, she cradles him. Clams line the walls. In their center she sits with him, the room pulsing with her warmth. I'm sorry I left you. She ministers to him, her hands weaving about the break in his shoulder. I beat him today. Beneath her fingertips the jagged pain of the break is smoothing, the bruised flesh relaxing. Dark bruises draining away. I did everything right. If Mr. Mostert had listened to me, the biggest sailfish ever caught in the bay would have been ours. She can see all of it, the foreigner watching him as he felt the fish below. Mostert shouts as the great fish sailed above them, her white belly as she finally turned and finned away. I showed them. It's because of you. He looks up at her then. Her hair swirls about the green of her eyes. She leans down and breathes into him. The taste of her on his tongue. Oxygen surges through his veins. Down in the cold of her cave, he is on fire. I had to leave you. I did not want him to find you. And now, as he threads his fingers through the hair at the nape of her neck, it is his turn to see the day through her eyes. All of the hours since he left her, her solitude and the empty ocean yawning about her. For a moment he feels the vast waters as they were for her, without center, nothing but the eternal current. He feels her loneliness. She smiles at his thought, her fingertips circling slowly about his shoulders. You exaggerate. This is my home. In her smile, he sees the truth of her words. She breathes into him again. I wish I could be a fish. I wish I could be here with you. She stares into his beautiful eyes, taking all of him in. And then she breathes into him once more. And their heat rises, and the future rises. In the dark of the deep night, the two of them enter the tunnel to the northern channel, both moving over the dark one. She touches him lightly as she passes, and he purrs. At the entrance, the two lovers pause to gaze at each other, and touch lips, and laugh at their joy. It is then that they both hear it. Eat. Their eyes swivel to the surface. It is coming from there. It is a fish they do not know, an alien to these waters. Eat. It is a harsh sound, relentless. Where is it? Each is asking the other, alternately holding each other's gaze or looking round, up and out, searching. Eat. And both hear it, a metallic tapping, a man-made sting that bends through the dark water. Both turn to the rock behind them, and from above another tap strikes through the rocky mass. Tap, 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 tap. Eat. Above them, near the surface, a new sight and a new sound. White light flashes, off and on, and with it the cyclical whoosh of artificial breathing. Instinctively they clasp hands and shrink back to the rock, hiding themselves as fish do when a hunter passes above. At the surface the creature reveals itself, a swollen body covered in rubber, festooned with mask and breathing tank and diver's belt and swinging torch, and in the right hand a rod stretching out, barbed at the tip. Uncle Mike fins lazily at the surface, every so often stopping to tap at Sentinel Rock with his spear gun, listening, and then beaming his torch to the rock and down to the ocean floor, his head obscured by his breathing bubbles. The boy's heart hammers. He is shocked to see his tormentor so close, so near to their sacred place. What is he doing here? The boy's eyes widen with terror, his lungs suddenly heaving. She clasps his arm tighter, her own heart hammering at the shock of the floating thing. My love, she attempts to reassure him, but she is too late. Panic is in his eyes. Bubbles escape his lips, rising in a column. Immediately that festooned head above snaps round, and the cruel light of its torch comes scything after. Behind them a new surging in the water. The Dark One has awakened at the spreading panic. The boy feels the beast slither. My love, she whispers, attempting to soothe his heart. My love. But he is no fish, and his calm down here is precarious. Suddenly his lungs are pumping in his chest and his mind is overtaken. Suddenly the threat above and the menace behind are nothing compared to his longing for air. He tears himself away from her, kicking up to the heavens just as the torchlight catches them both and she flits into the shadows. Uncle Mike looses his spear that comes rushing towards them. The boy rises free from the hole, kicking upward, pumping with all his might. The surface is above him, an eternity away as he reaches upward, clawing for it, and suddenly he breaks free and breathes mightily. The stars greet his gulping face and his bulging eyes. Impassive, they twinkle above him. He drinks the night's cold air, treading water, as without her the cold of the sea returns. Quickly he looks down, plunging his face back through the veil, and with maskless eyes he sees a boiling cloud down there. A wild swinging of the torchlight, and a mist of red rising up. Desperately he fills his lungs, filling his eyes with the stars before he upends himself and swims down, kicking and pulling at the water sliding through his fingers. He is not halfway when his panicked lungs begin to pump again and he must turn around, turn away. That last distance is impossible. All he sees is rising red and cascading bubbles, and the boiling form of Uncle Mike. He kicks upwards, desperate for the touch of the cold night on his lips. My love, he shouts, my love! But he hears nothing but the sawing of his own breathing. He turns to lie on his back on the surface. He wills himself to calm, his heart to slow, as he begins to gulp air regularly, wanting to find the lungful and the calm he will need to reach the bottom. "Give me strength," he whispers to the 3 twinkling stars of Orion's belt above. He is about to turn his face to the cold to try again when his body jerks to an impact at his ankle. With fearful strength, he is dragged back into the northern channel, away from the cave. He cannot resist. He kicks with his numbed limbs, but there is no movement in the biting cold. Sentinel Rock draws away from him, and before him on the surface swims the great form of Uncle Mike. His yellow scuba tank has breached the surface. His snorkel is a lonely finger pointing to the sky. In his wake is blood. The boy can taste it. Dread seizes him. Despair like nothing he has ever known steals into his heart. All fight drains from him. She is dead, and so he is dead also. Beyond that pointing snorkel drifts a small boat at anchor, a single white pilot light burning. Uncle Mike fins toward it. Soon they have reached it, and the boy will not respond. He lies dead in the water as Uncle Mike heaves him into the bottom of the boat. His face crunches against the wood, and his body shivers with the cold. He lies there, nailed to the bottom by grief, a stake of it buried in his heart. "My love," he moans. "My love." He feels the wild rocking of the boat as Uncle Mike hauls himself into it, the clatter of streaming water hitting the deck, and the thudding of his tank and diver's belt as he shrugs them off. Hatred rises in his heart, a cold fury, a clear intent. He opens his eyes. The boat tilts and the gear rolls towards him. Tied to the diver's belt, he sees Uncle Mike's blade, inches from his face, the bright silver dulled by blood. Hatred. His breath hisses through his teeth as he prepares to shift and free his right hand and reach for the knife. Certainty takes him, and he sees the act clearly, his turn and thrusting upwards into Uncle Mike's bulging belly. And even as the big man's arms reach down to crush him, even as those fists bash his skull, he will twist the blade and slice it upwards, his last sensation the spilling of that gut. He readies himself for the movement. He is about to pull his hand free when a sudden dead weight crushes him. He gasps at the pressure on his lungs. The weight slides over him, pulsating haphazardly, twitching. Blood leaks into his mouth, and despair overwhelms him. It is her body on top of him. He opens his eyes, ready to look on her devastation. But in front of his face is a dark finger, spasming rhythmically, curling and uncurling in the aftermath of death. A finger with a swath of sucker pads wiped across its edge. The dark one. He licks his lips. Ink, not blood. The flesh of a cephalopod. The twitching of a mollusk. Not her. Never her. She is not in this boat with them. He knows this suddenly. She is still in the water below. He begins to laugh, the tiniest of chuckles bubbling through the twisting pile of the octopus, as Uncle Mike primes his motor, 1, 2, and yanks it to life. Smoothly the dinghy turns on its moonlit wake, heading for the beach. 30 minutes later, Uncle Mike has the beach in sight. It shines white beneath the slender moon, and the surf froths white at the sand. He aims his boat for the landing zone, cutting the motor as a wave raises them up and he coasts in on it. Beneath him the boat is filled with the carcass, a head and beak atop a pile of lifeless tentacles. Uncle Mike wrinkles his nose in disgust. He did not expect to find that thing down there, a cephalopod of that size this far inshore. But he had dispatched it all the same, in the midst of its angry cloud of ink, its beak snapping at his face mask and its tentacles covering him with their sinuous power, while his knife slipped easily into the mantle and reached high, obliterating the heart. He had seen what he needed to, in the flashes of his torchlight swinging amongst the dying animal. A cave painted in clams, pearl-bearing clams. He will harvest them. That the boy appeared on the surface surprised him not at all. He has long since given up attempting to understand his strange mind. It is the boy's obsession with the northern channel that led him here, and the boy's discovery of the pearl. He smiles to himself as he leans forward, bracing for the crunch of hull on sand, his little motor raised and stowed out of the water. The boy has finally delivered something useful. He leaps from the boat and surges alongside it in the calf-deep surf, clamping a massive hand on the bow and pulling the boat up the beach. "Serves the little bastard right," he muses, eyeing the massive cephalopod congealed and full of slime, knowing the boy is beneath it. "You will have had a bumpy ride." Uncle Mike reaches his thick hand into the mess, pulling the ruined trunk and 4 of the tentacles with it. They slither and plop onto the sand. "The boy can harvest this later," he mutters. "Good for the restaurant at the hotel, or to Van Deventer for meal." Uncle Mike reaches in further, grasping another tentacle that convulses at his touch, turning in the night air as he swings it from the boat, revealing the boy beneath. "Asleep," mutters Uncle Mike. "Always asleep." He reaches in again for another handful, and the boy explodes into life. A blade flashes between them, and Uncle Mike jumps back. "You!" spits the boy. "You!" Uncle Mike watches him, the boy's intent clear. "You!" The boy hisses again, his face a mask of dark ink, his hair matted and clotted. Suddenly the strike, faster than Uncle Mike expected, and surer too. The sting on the inside of his forearm as blade bites to the bone. He jerks away, his right hand to the wound as new blood wells between his fingers. "What do you want, boy?" He can feel his blood pumping. He knows the cut is deep. The boy stands erect before him, his eyes blazing beneath the waning moon, the blade held straight out between them. "No more," he whispers between clenched teeth, his words limping through his broken lips. "No more." A moment longer he stands, with the blade out towards the bigger man, and it takes a moment more for each to record what is before them. Man, and across from him a boy, whose fierce eyes demand that time be halted, and his vow remembered. "No more," says the boy, before the violence leaves him, and in one movement he turns and begins to run down the beach, a single line of moonlit footprints laid in the sand. Uncle Mike watches. The boy's form merges with the dark until there is nothing but the white curve of the beach and the curling of the white surf endlessly rolling onto it. "No more," Uncle Mike whispers to the now empty beach. "No more." He sighs. He looks down to his arm in the glistening blood. He removes his hand to let the mouth of the wound fall open, letting it bleed. He nods to himself. No more.